Good morning. We are going to get started, you early birds. I'm so happy that everyone was on time. We appreciate you guys. Welcome to the Howard County Association of Realtors second quarterly broker manager meeting. We appreciate you guys getting up with us. I hope you got your cup of coffee or your breakfast. We have an amazing guest here. I'm sure you all know her. But I'm giving everybody a time to put their well, you don't have to have your cameras on, but get situated, because we're going to go straight into our discussion today and Kathleen's presentation. I got one more person in the wait room. Let me let in. All right. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and officially get started. I am Jessica Coach, your Chief Executive Officer for the Howard County Association of Realtors, your association, the best association. I'm just kidding. I'm feeling good this morning.
I am too. It's a good day.
Yes, it is. And I want to recognize any of our officers or board members that are in the audience. We have a few. Our current president, Sarah Anderson. I see a few other board members, Donnell Spivey, and a couple past presidents. Thank you guys for coming. So our guest today is Ms. Kathleen Dartez. She is the Director of Legal Affairs for Maryland Realtors. If you all missed some of the roundtable presentations that they put on a couple weeks ago, you missed a treat. But today you have the main character in that presentation. She had some amazing hot topics in her presentations, from service animal updates, love letter updates, office exclusives, source of income issues. I think you guys are in for a treat. Please put your questions in the chat, but we also will have time at the end to actually interact with Kathleen and ask other burning questions. So Kathleen, without further ado, please take the Zoom stage.
All right. Thank you so much, Jessica. And good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody again. I'm going to pull up a little slide deck. I'm not going to go through a ton of slides. It's really just to keep me on track. Let me just start here. Here's my less than stellar Zoom skills. There we go. Here's our baseball theme for spring, right? Like opening day was not that long ago. So our theme is basically you want to hit a grand slam, right? You want to win the game without fouling out. That's really our objective: staying out of realtor jail, staying out of trouble. And of course, with this market, there's always different challenges depending on what the market is. So we'll go through some of those challenges that we're having now with this shortage of inventory. Just this slide, I think all you all know everybody in the legal department, but just in case you don't, I'm just going to introduce everybody just briefly who they are. We've had, within the past year, Drew's been there just over a year. James joined toward the end of last summer. So we've got 4 attorneys on staff. All of us do the legal hotline. If you've called in or sent an email request, James Besley, he does a lot of legal hotline questions, and he staffs the statewide forms committee. I know some of y'all are on that committee or have been on that committee. He's doing a great job. I'm delighted that he loves forms. Yay. And then me, Mark Feinroth, again, you all know Mark. Mark's our Director of Political Advocacy. He teaches CE and helps out on the hotline as well. He really handles all things RPAC. So any questions you have about RPAC, any guidance, anything really political at all, advocacy related, he's really helpful on that and has a vast wealth of knowledge on those topics. And Drew Kelly, again, Drew has been here for just over a year. and he staffs the Commercial Alliance. And we just did our commercial symposium a couple of weeks ago down at the Live Hotel and Casino down at Arundel Mills. And that was a lot of fun. I think it was a good event. So again, if you call the hotline, you're going to speak with one of the four of us or send a request in. One of the four of us will be answering. Sandy Fraser, she'll be the one answering the phone, screening the calls as they come in. And if any matter goes to us for Professional Standards Administration, she's also our Professional Standards Administrator and does a great job with that. So let me just jump forward. This is our agenda for today, our hot topics. Jessica gave you a taste of it a couple seconds ago. But this is what I wanted to cover. We'll go through these kind of a little bit. I'll go through them, take questions on the chat. We'll allow time at the end to, go into more detail on some of these topics, or if there's anything else you want to talk about, what the heck, right? Baseball thing, just throw your pitch, right? I'll take a swing at it. All right, so we'll start first. One question that we've been asked about a lot recently is showing services. A lot of our members are contacting us, they have been approached by different companies, or maybe, have a friend who's been approached. What it would be like, say, I'm a buyer's agent. If I am not able, I'm super crazy busy, I'm not able to show this home to my buyer. This company has reached out and said, hey, we have people who can show for you. So you can go take care of your other business. We have licensed agents who will go show that home for you. What a great idea, right? It's going to save a lot of time. And the question, of course, that we've been getting is, is this permissible in Maryland? Is this legal? And the answer is no, this is not permissible in Maryland. And I know some of you guys have been licensed for quite a while. You will remember back to the, remember open houses. Remember when the previous executive director for the Real Estate Commission gave some guidance in that commission check newsletter about open houses. What was happening back then, I'm the listing agent with my brokerage. My seller wants me to do an open house on Sunday. I'm going to be out of town this weekend. My nephew's getting married, right? So I'm going to be out of town. So I want someone else to sit the open house for me. And I got my bestie, Jessica Coates from this other brokerage. We've been friends for years. She wants to help me out. I want to help her out, get her, let her meet some new buyers. So I want to ask Jessica from another company to sit my open house on Sunday. And the Real Estate Commission has been very clear on this for years, that is not permissible. If I want to have somebody sit my open house for me, it has to be someone who is affiliated with the same broker as me. It has to be somebody from within my company. If Jessica from another company is going to sit my open house, the Real Estate Commission would treat her as unlicensed. We all provide real estate brokerage services for a broker, right? So if that my broker is not, affiliated with that other agent, it's as if they're unlicensed. So again, just think of that rationale and those concepts and apply it to the current situation. If I am the buyer's agent, I'm not able to show the home for whatever reason. Can I use an agent from another company to show the property? No, I can't. That person would be providing real estate brokerage services and they're not affiliated with my broker. So just like this was a trend of maybe a couple months ago. We had 1 or 2 questions and then it kind of died off. And then we've had a lot of questions. So it's not permissible in Maryland. Same logic the Real Estate Commission has had for at least 10 years, I'll be honest, where that's not acceptable. And again, I'm just going to caution you all, you go on Facebook, or your agents go on these big Facebook groups. Facebook groups have people from a whole bunch of states. It might be somebody from, I don't know, Nevada or someplace where it is legal to do that, where it is permissible. So just because they see it on Facebook and say, yeah, that's fine, my broker said that's fine, it's not fine here in Maryland. Period. Like I said, the Real Estate Commission has been very clear on that for a very long time. If it is an activity that requires a license, real estate brokerage services, essentially, the only one who can perform that for you is someone who's affiliated with the same broker. Period. That one's actually pretty straightforward. The next thing we'll talk about, I guess, office exclusives and coming soon, kind of talk about them together. Coming soon status, you all know that's been around for a long time. I think some of the questions that come up, I think some people don't like it. And I think the reason some people don't like it is because some people are not using that status properly. What is supposed to happen is, you're basically trying to drill up excitement for that listing, right? You're going to put a sign up in the yard, say coming soon, and the owner's going to, I don't know, paint or have the guy finish replacing the roof or whatever it is. And then that status, the property will be in coming soon status for no more than 21 days. Then it'll be on the market. Voila, everyone's excited. The kind of questions we get on the legal hotline are, well, the first one, I guess, is if the property is going from coming soon status and then it's, pending under contract, is that acceptable? If the property wasn't shown, how can it be under contract so quickly? And that actually is okay. If you look at the Bright MLS rules, buyers are allowed to submit offers on a coming soon property. You can't show that property, right? So this would be a buyer who's submitting an offer sight unseen. They have not seen the property, but they're going to submit an offer anyway. we can talk about that for a couple hours, whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. But if the buyer is willing to do that and submits the offer, the listing agent, of course, is obligated under Maryland law to present all offers to the seller. So the listing agent would properly present that offer, and the seller can accept that offer. If you look at the Bright MLS rules, it clearly says that's permissible. Excuse me, I'm bumping here. That's permissible. That doesn't violate any Bright MLS rules. So that's acceptable. The office exclusive, that goes to the clear cooperation rule where all the listings are to be posted on Bright MLS. And again, the only exception to that is an office exclusive, where, if the seller instructs you not to put the property on Bright MLS, the property can only be marketed within your brokerage. There's a paper that has to be completed that has to be submitted to Bright MLS. But the key there is it cannot be marketed outside your brokerage. A yard sign is marketing it outside your brokerage, right? And posting it on Facebook is marketing it outside your brokerage. So yeah, the office exclusive is really a limited situation. And again, it's supposed to be at the seller's request. I think you all know better than I do, there's advantages and disadvantages too to putting something, keeping something off Bright MLS. There's a smaller pool of buyers that would see it. That may not be the best thing for the seller, but the seller does have the authority to make that decision. The seller can direct you that they don't want it put on Bright MLS for whatever reason. Sometimes it's a high profile client who may not want everybody and their brother knowing that the property's for sale, or everybody and their brother coming through. They might want to keep it a little more close than that. So that would make sense. But just remember, the office exclusive, there's some pretty clear limitations on that. And the most clear, the little box you're in, you cannot market it outside your brokerage, period. All right. Yes.
Kathleen, you have a few questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to hold all questions to the end, but before you get off too many of the topics from the questions, would you like to take a jab at these two?
Yeah, let me go through a couple of these. How much information can a listing agent give to a buyer's agent? For example, when the buyer's agent asks if there are other offers, to avoid writing an offer that may not be accepted, can the listing agent say, for example, it may be good if you offered X over? That is a good question. If you contact the legal hotline on that, our guidance is, and consistent with NAR's Code of Ethics, at least here in Maryland, the listing agent can let the buyer's agent know that there are other offers, but they should not disclose the terms of those other offers. Again, I think in this market, I know that's going to be tricky, but I think the thought is, if someone theoretically was willing to offer X plus this, a high number, and you tell them that all the offers are down here, theoretically, that could hurt the seller. The person may not offer that high. They're going to come in down here, of course. They're not going to offer a higher number than they need to. So they can exclude, the listing agent can disclose the existence of other offers, the fact that there are other offers, but cannot disclose the terms of those offers.
Yeah.
All right. And then how does that apply to transaction management companies writing offers for agents when they are not affiliated with the brokerage? That's a good question too. Transaction management, basically any activity that requires a license should be performed by licensees, right? Transaction management, I guess it depends what the transaction coordinator or what that person is doing. Really, it should be administrative functions, right? It shouldn't be something that requires a license. They shouldn't be on the phone discussing the features of the property or negotiating or anything like that. But if it's just, checking a box or putting a contract together, maybe with a checklist, that might be okay. But really think about administrative function as what they can do. Anything that involves judgment or discretion, that really kind of crosses the line. And that would be the type of activity that would require a license. If you want to look, I would say look on the Maryland Real Estate Commission website. They've got information, do's and don'ts about unlicensed assistants, what they can do, what they can't do. That could be a good little refresher for you if you want to go through some of those points. But they cannot show properties, right? And can't answer detailed information about the properties. It's more administrative tasks, scheduling, making appointments, that type of thing. All right. And can they discuss how many offers they have in hand? Yes, you could say how many offers you have in hand. That would be fine. Nothing wrong with that. All right. All right. So let's jump on. Good questions. Keep them coming. All right. Now we'll hop on to everyone's favorite topic, fair housing. April is Fair Housing Month. I think everybody knows the Fair Housing Act was signed in April, what was it, April 11th, I think, in 1968. And we had a whole day yesterday, so I'm kind of pumped on fair housing, like every day, I guess. But there are still challenges, of course. I think there was the quote in our slide deck was that President Johnson said when he signed the act that we'd come some of the way, but there was still a lot of work to be done, and we still had, a ways to go. And unfortunately, the sad part about that is as true today in 2022 as it was in 1968. So some new issues and some issues that are just pervasive and keep recurring over and over. Here in Maryland, source of income is a question or a new protected class. It was added statewide October 1, 2020. I know y'all in Howard County, source of income has been a protected class for a long time, so it may not be as much of a challenge for you guys as it is for some of the other people. But essentially, you know the rules. You cannot, if you're representing a landlord, the landlord cannot automatically reject an applicant just because they're using a voucher. You cannot put in your advertising that the landlord won't accept vouchers. You cannot say on Bright MLS, no vouchers accepted, right? Those are all violations. Those are all illegal because source of income is a protected class statewide. Like I said, I don't know if you guys are going to have questions on that. Probably not too many. Shoot, you guys could probably teach the class on source of income now. I know it's been protected class for a long time in Howard County, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. Service animals is one of the areas where we get a lot of questions. Always have, and I maybe always will. I think it's one of those things that's discussed in class, and I think everyone kind of understands it conceptually. But when you're in the trenches and a real situation comes up, that's when you think like, all right, wait a minute, this is kind of a weird one. How do I respond to this one? So essentially, service animals, we kind of, the presentation that Colette and I prepared for yesterday, we were very careful with our terminology. We wanted to track HUD's terminology very carefully. So the big concept is assistance animals, right? There are assistance animals, and there's two types of assistance animals. We've got service animals and support animals, right? And I think the challenge for most people when we think about any type of assistance animal, what we tend to think about first is like under the American with Disabilities Act, say a blind person who needs a guide dog, a seeing eye dog, right? That's what we think of. An animal that has been, specifically trained to perform tasks for the person with the disability. And under the American with Disabilities Act, that's true. That's what the criteria is. If I own a restaurant, some place of public accommodation, a title company, a real estate brokerage, a local board, that's a place of public accommodation. If someone wants to come in with their service animal, I have to let them. The law requires that. A blind person, I can't say, sorry, someone might be allergic or we don't allow pets. I can't say that, right? So that's what we tend to think of. But for our day-to-day business, for all of our agents, for all of our members, all of our clients, under the Fair Housing Act, the concept is broader than that. Under the Fair Housing Act, the concept is a support animal, right? That's the accommodation that would have to be made, even if the landlord or the housing provider has a no pet policy. If this person has a disability and a disability-related need for this support animal, then the housing provider has to make an exception and would have to allow that person to occupy the property with their support animal. And again, the support animal, it's like I said, it's a much broader concept. A support animal does not have to be specifically trained to perform services for that person, believe it or not. They don't have to go to a school to be, trained and certified. The owner can just have a cat, if the cat provides some therapeutic benefit for the person, if it relieves their anxiety, lowers their blood pressure, whatever it might be. If the person has a disability and a disability related need for that animal, that's it, that's sufficient. The documentation that you can ask for is, again, somewhat limited. You could ask for, it's going to be a letter generally from a doctor, a social worker, a healthcare provider, and the letter will have to say that the person has a disability and a disability related need for the animal. And that's all the landlord or the housing provider is entitled to ask for. You can't ask for, well, how do I know she has, can I have 2 years worth of medical records? None of that stuff. You would look at that letter and the letter will say they have a disability and a disability related need for that animal. The one thing I know that was coming up a lot a couple years ago, I haven't heard too many questions about that recently, but I'll just mention it because y'all might still be seeing it. Those online certifications that people can get. You go online and pay, I don't even know, $100 or something, and say, you know, do you have anxiety? Yes. Do you have a pet? Yes. Does your pet relieve your anxiety? Yes. Voila, hit print, you know, and you got your certificate. And HUD did give some guidance on that. HUD said, this was, I think it was in 2020, I believe, HUD issued some guidance on that and said, generally, that type of certificate alone is not sufficient to establish the disability and the disability related need for the support animal. Oftentimes it's a, you know, it's a website, a nationwide website, and there's no relationship between whoever signed it and the, you know, the person with the disability. It's not a therapeutic relationship. It's not necessarily a doctor-patient relationship. So that was the guidance on that, that's not necessarily sufficient. You may be allowed to ask for additional documentation in those cases. And the only other weird thing about service animals, well, I've got a couple. Let me just go through them. Maybe I'll preempt some of your questions. These are the questions we get asked, and I got asked yesterday, or were asked yesterday, and the day before. I did fair housing 2 days before, and then yesterday we had our fair housing summit. One question, service animals, how about if I have it's a condo, right? And the condo has regulations and that say no pets or no pets over a certain size. And someone wants to rent one of the condo units and they have a support animal, you know, a dog that is a larger size. Can the landlord reject them because of the condo rules? Oh, says my battery is running low. That's not good. Hold on 1 second. Let me fix that. I don't know what's going on there. Shoot. Anyway, I'm going to keep talking. I'll keep talking, see what I can figure out. Okay. I might put my face out for a second. Let me do my video off for a second. I'm going to keep talking. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, the bottom line is, even if the condo association has rules and says you can't have an animal over a certain size, you can't have a dog over 10 pounds or 12 pounds or whatever, the bottom line is that those condo rules do not supersede or take precedence over the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act is a federal law, and federal law generally is going to take, supersede any state or local laws to the contrary, right? Again, remember, with protected classes, the federal law, the federal protections are sort of the minimum. States can add additional protected classes. Counties can add additional protected classes. You cannot take away any of those federal protections. So the Fair Housing Act is a federal act. It does protect people with disabilities. It does require the housing provider to make reasonable accommodations for somebody with a disability, including, allowing a pet or service animal, support animal, despite a no pet rule. So that would be considered a reasonable accommodation. And the condo rules basically would not prevail and would not be able to prevent that. Another one, I don't know if you guys sell any properties in Prince George's County, but Prince George's County has a county regulation prohibiting pit bulls. No pit bulls in Prince George's County. And that always comes up if you're in Prince George's County, what happens there. If someone has a support animal that is a pit bull, again, the same concept, if they have a letter from a medical provider saying they have a disability and a disability related need for that animal, they would be allowed to have the pit bull, notwithstanding that county ordinance. The federal law, the disability protections would prevail over that county charter. What was the other one? A pet deposit, that comes up all the time. Can I charge a pet deposit if the applicant needs a support animal, a cat, a dog, whatever it might be?
Okay, we may have lost Kathleen. We're going to give her a second to get back in. Give us a few minutes, guys. Thank you.
So while we're waiting, we just want to remind everybody that we do have a Fair Housing Month challenge going on. Oh, there's Kathleen. Hey, Kathleen, you're back.
Great plug, Sarah.
Yeah. So we're trying to encourage our members to complete Fairhaven. And if you are a broker manager, we have a contest going on where if you have the most people in your office to complete Fairhaven, which is an interactive sort of fun video game, then you can have an advertising spot on our website next month. So just wanted to plug that while we were waiting for Kathleen to hop back on.
Great. Thank you. Sorry about that, you guys. We just redid our offices and we've all got, new chargers and new docking stations and all this, and I don't know quite what's going on, but anyway, it's charging now. So I'm back. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate that. Let me go back to the screen share too. All right. So we were talking about service animals, I believe, right? Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. So that was the pet deposit, I think, was the question. I was just kind of the topic I was leading into. And again, of course, remember the concept to think about is a service animal, a support animal, an assistance animal. They are not pets. That's the easiest way to think about it. So you cannot charge a pet deposit because they are not pets, right? You can't say no pets because they're not pets. It's something that a person with a disability needs. So those policies would not apply. The only other guidance, recent guidance from HUD, we did a magazine article about this as well. And if anybody's interested, I could send you this 11 page or 13 page legal memorandum from HUD. But it was discussing some of the sort of unusual cases that we get. Everybody hears about this on the news. Someone is saying they have an emotional support peacock. They have an emotional support, I don't know, a snake or something like that. So HUD did give a really detailed legal memorandum going through some of those scenarios and what questions would be appropriate for the housing provider to ask for, what would not be appropriate to ask. And essentially the line, sort of the line of demarcation, basically domestic animals, what we think of as domestic animals, a cat, a dog, I think a rabbit, maybe sort of what you would think of. Those things, again, like I said, you would be entitled to ask for a letter from a healthcare provider or a social worker saying the person has a disability and a disability related need for the animal. If it's one of those more exotic sort of things, chickens, I'm not even making this up. Someone we had to call on a legal hotline. Someone was an applicant who's going to rent a property, said they had emotional support chickens. And that is, I don't know where that one came from, but anyway, that is sort of the chickens or barnyard animals are not considered domesticated pets. So that's entitled to sort of a higher level of scrutiny. And the letter from the medical provider would not just say that this person needs an emotional support animal. The letter would have to say that this person needs an emotional, a support chicken to accommodate their disability or to help alleviate provide some therapeutic benefit related to that disability. So that's sort of a higher level of scrutiny for those unusual requests. And again, if that comes up, I could give you that if you want to take a look at it, or if you're a broker who just wants to have that on standby, I could share that with you guys as well. Do we have any other questions right now? No, I think so. I'll
you got one addition in the chat. I could read it to you.
Okay.
It was from our Brooke Rom. Can a landlord refuse a voucher based on the fact that there are additional inspections and paperwork needed for some voucher programs? Tenant meets all other credit and income requirements.
That is a great question, Brooke. That comes up all the time. I'll tell you, we did a webinar about a year or so ago and had a woman from Anne Arundel County, Mary Grove, and she's their past president. Maybe it was not immediate past president, the year before, I think, past president. And she does a lot of property management, and she specifically addressed that. And what she said she does with her, for her landlords, if someone applies and is using a voucher and is qualified, what she'll do is tell them that she will, she'll take that application, but she's going to continue to accept other applications. And when she takes theirs, they can initiate the process, contact the county or whatever it is to line up the inspection and get all of that done. But in the meantime, the landlord is going to continue to accept other applications. And if the landlord has somebody else or gets another one who's qualified and approved first, that, doesn't, before the Section 8, the voucher program, all the inspections take place. If the other applicant is ready to go before then the landlord would accept the other applicant. So you would have to, process that application and move forward to start the inspection process. Again, I don't know how long it takes from county to county. I'll be honest. It wouldn't surprise me if it's going to take longer consistently than it would to just, take another applicant and accept it. But again, the point is the landlord cannot reject that person and say, it's going to take too long. My property is going to be off the market too soon. What the landlord can say is, I will accept, I'll take that, but I'm going to continue to accept offers from other applicants. We'll start the process with the county. We'll start the inspection process. It's essentially a race, really. If that gets completed first, of course, you'll be welcome. We'll accept you. But I'm also pursuing this other track. And if this person is approved using the same criteria, same credit score, all that good stuff, then that person is going to be approved and going to get the property. So that was the way she recommended doing it. Just rejecting somebody or saying no, that's what's going to get you in trouble. So good question. Good question, Brooke. All right. So then we have, was there another one? Was that it? Was that it? Okay. Love letters is the next one on the list here. And that's always kind of an interesting question. You all know what love letters are. I always say these are not the good love letters, not the ones you want to get. These are the other love letters, right? A love letter would be a letter, a photograph, a video, something that a buyer would present when making an offer. Generally, they would present that to the seller to make their offer more attractive to the seller, right? To try and make the seller, hey, I want to sell to these people, right? Generally, of course, under fair housing, we don't want the seller to be considering anything really other than the economic terms of the transaction, right? What's the sales price? Am I going to have to give any closing help? What's the settlement date? Sort of objective criteria, right? We don't want our landlord looking at someone's photograph and seeing, oh, they're the same color as me. Look at them standing in front of a Christmas tree. They're Christians too, or look at them lighting the menorah, whatever it is. All of those things that show someone's characteristics and protected classes, none of those things should be factors that should be considered by the seller. So that's what the risk is of writing those love letters or photos or videos or whatever it is they're sending. Essentially, the buyer's asking the seller to consider factors outside the scope of the contract, and that could pose some fair housing risks. So again, NAR has been clear on this. If you all haven't done the Fair Haven and do it, you'll notice that there's some discussion in there about love letters. NAR is very clear. Don't read them, don't write them, don't deliver them, period. And that, again, that's been in place for over 2 years. They've been very clear on that. There's, if you're looking to do a sales meeting on love letters, there's some guidance from NAR as well too. I think they called them love letters or liability letters. I think that was the title of the article. But the guides, of course, is don't do them. The questions that come up with respect to love letters, the first question that always comes up is someone asks, well, isn't it possible to do a love letter that doesn't mention, that I have a family, I have 3 children, or doesn't include a photo? Isn't it possible to do a love letter that just talks about the features of the house? And I would say, yes, theoretically, that is possible. But again, this is a meeting for broker managers. So you guys think about this. If that's what we're going to say, if you were going to allow your agents, to let their clients send love letters, that puts your agent in a situation where they have to read that love letter and they have to make a legal determination. Does this cross the line into mentioning, protected characteristics or being in a protected class, or is this acceptable? And I think most of y'all know I worked as a general counsel in a brokerage. I don't feel comfortable with that at all. I don't want agents having to make legal determinations about a letter, whether it's legally, crossing the line or not crossing the line. I would imagine most of the brokers and office managers on here would prefer to avoid that too. It really is risky, and it really is. It's a fair housing issue. Someone would may tend to accept an offer from, oh, this family has 3 children. I raised my 3 children here. So what we did Again, consistent with the guidance from NAR, Maryland Realtors, this issue was brought to our statewide forms committee first, and there was discussion about what can we do about love letters, and specifically we looked at the buyer agency agreement and the listing agreement and the fair housing paragraph in each of those documents. And so we essentially just beefed up those paragraphs. So in those paragraphs now, there's a sentence where the client expressly agrees that they will follow the fair housing laws. Now, I mean, in all honesty, they're required to anyway, so that's not really legally necessary. But you guys know, you want to have sort of teachable moments where you can educate your clients, and that's an opportunity for your agents to do that when they're meeting with a client, just to kind of set the framework. There are laws that I have to follow. I can't follow any illegal instructions. If you ask me to do something that's going to get, that's outside the scope or potentially illegal, I'm not going to do it. You're not going to do it. You're not going to ask me to do that, right? So that was the first thing. The client affirmatively states that they will follow the fair housing laws. And then there's a little bit of an explanation about what love letters are. Essentially asking the seller to consider factors outside the contract itself. And it defines letters kind of broadly, like including photographs, videos, or any other documentation that would be submitted. And I think the most important thing, and this was again addressed at the statewide forms committee, a couple of the brokers who were on that committee were the ones who mentioned it. Well, what is the agent supposed to do if they receive a love letter? So that there's a sentence in there where the client instructs the agent, if you receive a love letter, you remove that from the offer before presenting it to the seller, right? And the client says, remove the love letter, take the love letter out, do not present the offer with the love letter. So that, I think that's good. It's good risk management for the agents, keeps them out of trouble, and hopefully keeps the sellers from considering things that they shouldn't be considering. That so far, I haven't heard, haven't heard any negative feedback on that so far. The other thing I wanted to mention is you may have heard about this. There was a headline about, it was a case, I believe it was was it Washington State? Not a case, excuse me. It was legislation that was approved, a bill that was proposed and passed in the state of Washington, I believe it was, outlawing love letters, saying it would be illegal. And there was an update on that recently, just a month or two ago. A court out there, someone had challenged that law and said it was overly vague and it was unconstitutional, violation of free speech. And remember, this is because it was a state law. Free speech, again, is the government taking action or prohibiting action, right? So unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, that law, it hasn't been overturned and declared like invalid, but there was a preliminary injunction that was granted, basically stopping the state at least temporarily. You are enjoined or you're stopped from enforcing that law at least temporarily. And here in Maryland, we did have a bill proposed that was virtually identical to that. Obviously, the fact that a court looked at it and said that it was potentially unconstitutional, that obviously slammed the brakes on our bill, and that is not moving forward this year. Jessica can explain the legislative process, but a lot of times they do summer sessions and they'll look at bills and think if there's some other way to go around it or to word it, it's possible that that's what's going to happen with that bill. But as of right now, it is not illegal in Maryland to use a love letter. It is ill-advised. It is not great risk management. And at least if you're using our statewide forms, there's a contract, it's a contractual provision, a contractual agreement that love letters will not be submitted to the seller, and that the agent is authorized and instructed to remove love letters before forwarding them to the seller, excuse me. All right, the next one up here, discrimination based on a buyer's name. This kind of just takes you back to, like I said, 1968, and when the Fair Housing Act was first passed. Some of these things that were happening way back then are still happening now. Discrimination based on a buyer's name. There's two cases. The big one was, it took place up in New England, And again, they have the very similar market to what we had, inventory shortage, few properties for sale, a lot of buyers, right? Multiple offer situation. In this case, it was exactly that, multiple offers. And these one particular buyers, this couple really, really, really wanted their house. So the seller had come back and countered, the seller wanted A, B, C, and D. This couple absolutely positively wanted the house. They agreed, yes, we're going to do A, B, C, D. We agree to every stinking thing you're asking for. We'll agree to it, right? So they sign, the buyer's agent's excited, calls a listing agent. Oh my gosh, I can't believe my clients agreed to everything. I'm sending that offer right over to you right now. The listing agent's like, great, I'll give the seller a heads up and get back to you as soon as possible. And then the buyer's agent is waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and I think doesn't hear back from the listing agent till like the following day. And what had happened, the listing agent presented the offer to the sellers, all excited because it's everything they asked for. And the sellers looked at the buyer's name, and the woman's first name was Ebony. And the sellers asked the listing agent if the buyers were Black. And the listing agent said, yeah, as a matter of fact, they are. And the seller said, we're not going to sell our property to Black people, period. And they wouldn't sign it, even though every single thing they wanted was there. That was like the perfect offer, but they refused to sign because the buyers were Black, based on the name. Well, because the buyers were Black, really, not because of the name. But anyway, so again, your brokers, your office managers, think about yourself. One of your agents is in that situation listing a property, and the sellers have said, forget it. I don't care if that's everything we wanted. We're not going to sign that offer. What do you do? In this case, I think the listing agent really handled it perfectly. She called her broker immediately, and the broker said, we can't represent that client. That violates fair housing. Clearly, blatantly, that violates fair housing laws. We cannot represent that seller. We have to terminate our relationship with that seller. So they did. They terminated their brokerage relationship with that seller. And then the listing agent contacted the buyer's agent and spoke truthfully about what had happened. And the buyers went out and hired an attorney. And you talk about a federal case. This literally is a federal case. Remember, the fair housing laws are federal laws. So they hired an attorney and filed a lawsuit in federal court. It was in federal court in Rhode Island. And the listing agent filed an affidavit just outlining the facts that I just said, exactly what happened when the sellers saw the buyer's name. They asked about their race and said they would not sign it based on the buyer's race. So the listing agent signed that affidavit, and it was attached as an exhibit to the buyer's complaint. Basically, they were cooperating with the buyer, working with the buyer in the lawsuit. And that lawsuit was pending for a couple months. It went back and forth a little bit. It settled not that long ago. There was a settlement conference, and then the case is closed now because it's settled. You cannot see what the terms of the settlement are. It's closed. It's not an order that you can readily view. But I think, honestly, the reason it's settled is because the sellers are going to lose, period, that you can't do that. And again, a lot of these things, you think these are isolated cases. We heard about that. I heard about that case through NAR. Within 2 weeks of that, I heard about a case here in Maryland. Identical facts, multiple offer situation. Buyers really wanted the home. They agreed to every single thing the seller wanted, all the economic terms, absolutely 100% great offer for the sellers. Buyer's agent sends it over. In this case, the seller saw the buyer's last name and thought it sounded like an African last name, and they refused to sign. So just again, in your capacity as brokers and office managers, be prepared to deal with that and make sure that your agents are prepared to deal with that. Because it is happening. Like I said, it was happening in 1968. It's still happening today. And that's blatant. You cannot continue to represent that seller. That seller will not win. That is clearly illegal. I'm going to give you one little story I heard. A woman in a class that I taught, she said that's been going on for a long time, Kathleen. She said she had a client who years ago didn't want to sell to the buyers because of their race. And she said she told the client that's illegal. And the client said, I don't care. And she said, I'll tell you what, if there's a lawsuit, you're going to lose. I'll tell you what, let's go to the title company. And, we can talk to an attorney and he can explain to you how things work. And then we can talk again. And she said she drove her client over to her favorite title company. And she said the attorney and the client went into a conference room, shut the door. She said they were in there for about 5 minutes, and the client came out and said, all right, I'll sign it. So I'm not saying that's the best solution, but it really is that clear. The client will not win. So maybe you can, bring them to an attorney and strong arm them and get them to sign it and agree anyway, even if they're not smiling when they sign it. If they're not going to do that, if you can't have a logical conversation with them and explain how things work, if they're going to insist on violating the law, then you will have to terminate your relationship with that client. You cannot represent that client. All right, so was there any questions on that?
We have a few questions, Kathleen. I'm going to go up a little while. You have shared some great information. We did have a young man, Mr. Henry Yawson. He asked, can you share the presentation? But I know your presentation doesn't have all the meat in it, but I'm sure you and Henry can chat about possibly you doing this presentation in his brokerage. So that's Henry Yawson.
I know Henry.
Oh,
Global business. Global business.
Right. And then Gene said, Gene just confirmed he will not be put in that situation with those love letters. Right on, Gene. And then Mr. Kenny Smallwood, he had a really good question. How about agents who require the financial information sheets completed on all offers using the context for approval of the offer? Does that breach the customer's protection of source of income, the familial status, etc., when in fact the information sheet contains all those requirements? What about the release of consumer protection on credit when the listing agent has a release that the listing agent can request confidential information on the loan, like credit scores, right, and income and source of fund? Is this allowed? That's a long question.
That's a long question. That is a great question. What was that? Kenny Smallwood asked that one?
Yeah.
Was that a combination of both?
It was.
Yeah, that is a great question. I've seen some of those financial information things, and I have the same concerns. I'll be honest, I saw some of those when I worked at the brokerage, and I contacted the real estate commission because the one that I can think of off the top of my head, it sounds very similar to what you just said. Excuse me. The buyer's agent, on the one that I saw, the buyer's agent was being asked to say, my client has excellent credit, fair credit, good credit, whatever, and disclose all that sort of information, plus the banking account information, the employment information, the salary information, all that. But the one that leaped out at me is, why would the buyer's agent be vouching for someone's credit? That really just jumped out at me. I thought there's no way, that's not appropriate for any of you all to be doing that. So I contacted the real estate commission. Honestly, I was an attorney. It's easier for me to do it. I don't have any clients who are, going to get mad if I talk to, talk to the other broker any kind of way. But the real estate commission did contact the company that had generated those, and they stopped using those forms. So I think the tricky part now is that the market is so tight. There's multiple offers, and if you are refusing to complete a form that the listing agent is asking for, what happens? Does that mean your client's offer will not be accepted? In the perfect world, the answer is no. That form is not legally required. I think even just the bullet points that were touched on, I think they're outside the scope of your role, your real estate license. And I think it is confidential information from the buyers that, that would be something they would discuss with their loan officer. I'm not sure the seller needs to know all of that detail. I mean, is the seller a loan officer or a financial analyst? Does the seller know what they're to calculate a debt to income ratio? I mean, it's really, those make me nervous. I think there's more going on there than meets the eye. And I think it could be a pretext for rejecting somebody potentially. I don't know if it would be source of income, but there's a lot of information that's disclosed in there. Those make me very uncomfortable. I can't say for sure what I would do, but I think the first thing I would do is probably contact the real estate commission and have a conversation with the real estate commission about that. Anybody, have you guys anyone done anything with that or had any great strategy for dealing with those kind of things?
You want to take your share screen off so that we can interact with everyone?
Sure. Thank you.
And I think there was one more question, but that was a good question for the audience.
Definitely. Anybody else have any strategy for dealing with that? If you send the offer in without that financial information sheet, what happens?
Can we speak?
Yes, definitely. Yes, Karen.
Okay. I've had a situation, several, with one particular office. I won't mention that office name. And they seem to think that if they use the financial, the buyer's financial condition, that they won't even present the offer. My question to them is, why am I giving you a pre-approval letter from the bank,
Right.
and then you want this too? That's unfair to the client. Either you take the bank's letter or, but the girl told me, she said, if you don't send me over the financial condition, I'm not going to present your offer. Is that fair to my client?
Yeah, my thought, just as soon as you started talking, I was thinking that the best strategy I would think is exactly what you had said. Get a pre-approval, not a pre-qual, pre-approval, a real pre-approval for your client, and send that over. That's more solid than that financial information sheet, I would think.
Well, and that's what I said to her. I said, if you have any questions about their pre-approval, you should call the lender.
Right.
But anybody could put whatever they want on that financial information sheet, and how you gonna verify it?
Yeah.
How does
Well,
it
I'm gonna
say?
say
How does
nobody should put whatever they want. Let's just, there's
I'm
a
just
implied
saying,
duty of good faith and all that good stuff. But you're right. I get you.
if I pass that to my buyer and they've already given the bank the information and they get upset about it, they'll put down whatever they want. I mean, I've had buyers tell me, oh, I'm gonna do this so my loan won't get approved. And I said, well, I can't say what you can do and what you cannot do. That's not my job, so. And the same thing applies to the financial sheet, is that you put stuff on there, how do they verify it, and how do they know that it's true?
Right.
If I gave you a pre-approval, then that pre-approval letter, if you have any doubt about it, you should call the lender.
All right. Yeah, to me, again, the pre-approval from a letter is clearly more substantial and should carry more weight than a form that's filled out. And you're right. Again, remember, think even if you represent landlords with tenants, I mean, someone has to give you authorization to run a credit check and do all that information. You can't just go, there's no way to verify it absent that sort of thing. So I'm not sure what the point is. Oh, did Kenny post something? I think that might be a good point. Information
few
sheets,
things that's been posted. Yeah.
Yeah, information sheets are from the days prior to consumer credit protection. The form in itself should not be legal. The instructions are its requirement for the offer to be presented or to be accepted. The financial information that is ultimately rejected has been strength of income versus other buyers. Okay, I see what you're saying. And again, that, just for the sake of discussion, income, the strength of their income versus other buyers, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I could be a very wealthy family and have work at a nonprofit doing something that I love, and I could have a ton, very financially capable of purchasing the property, even if my income isn't as strong as somebody else's. So again, that's interesting, but that's a good point. I think, though, the days prior to consumer credit protection. What else? Sheets that are required that are for occupation. Seems like it opens itself to discriminate against someone based on the type of job they hold or their source of income. Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say what goes through somebody's mind. Maybe somebody doesn't like the military. They were in the military and had a terrible experience, and they see someone's, employed by the U.S. Navy. They don't want to accept that person. It's possible, I don't like those forms at all. I think I don't think they provide valuable information or information that could be obtained like from a pre-approval letter, much stronger and more solid way of obtaining their financial wherewithal to go through with the purchase. I do think there's also some risks because it may it showed they're married, they're not married, they're children, whatever, all kinds of things could be disclosed in there that potentially, again, fair housing issues there. What does it say? Statement that listing agents using the forms are that lenders lie. They also refer to builders using these information sheets, and it is common. Okay.
You guys can raise your hand and interact with her. We can talk now. You don't have to put it in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Does anybody on here, again, this is no judgment. Does anybody use them? Does your company, if you're on the listing side, does your brokerage require those forms, or have you utilized them?
I'd like to just bring something up on behalf of sellers. Over the years, I've had 2 or 3 sellers kind of ask for something like that. And more recently, in the last year or 2, I had a situation where we had a whole bunch of offers and a whole bunch of pre-approved buyers. And you know, yes, I pointed out to the seller that the buyers could be lying about the information, but there were some buyers who had, you know, $1 million in assets and no liabilities, and, you know, just were absolutely, you know, stronger than any of the other offers. So it did give them some comfort in having that additional information, as opposed to looking at 5 or 6 pre-approval letters.
Now, see, that's interesting to me. Again, I don't sell, and I've never sold, but to me, it seems like I would put more weight into a lender's pre-approval than into some form that the buyer fills out themselves.
But all the pre-approval letters look the same, basically, because they don't give you any information like what their assets are, what their liabilities are. You know, all it just says is these guys have been approved.
Right. What was the other comment? The seller, to me, would only know to ask for the financial sheet only if the seller agent told them about the form.
Kathleen.
That depends on who. Oh, hey.
Hey. I just feel like it's much like the love letters. It's none of the seller's business, as long as they have provided, they have shown that they are able to purchase the property. It doesn't, you know, you could have $1 million and still be a mess, and your credit still be a mess, just because you're that kind of person,
Right.
or whatever. And where you get the funds, again, that's a protected class. You know, if somebody was getting it from alimony, they might look poorly on that, or whatever. I just feel like it's very much like love letters, that it's really none of their business. They shouldn't be basing it on that, whether it gives them a warm and fuzzy or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm of a different view, because what I teach my agents, and I've been teaching them for years, is you need those financial information sheet. Not so much. It's just to show, especially in this market, and especially back in the market in early 2000s, is people make offers higher and above the ask price. So you want to make sure they have the funds, because you don't want someone that says, okay, I'm going to offer whatever the price is and go 30, 40, 50,000 dollars above that. And there's nothing on paper that shows, because once they sign that financial information sheet, they are testing to that they have the money. So it's not so much for that. It's just to show that they have the funds to close, especially in this market. So that's why we use it. We use it, and that's why sometimes that's why we request it, especially in offers where somebody offers way above the list price.
Right. Now, are you just talking about completing the form, or you know, proof of funds, like a bank statement or something like that? Because I'm just, you know, I do a legal hotline. I'm suspicious of people. All I hear about are problems and bad things. I'm thinking someone could write on a piece of paper that they've got 100,000 in the bank. That doesn't mean they do. Do you also want to see a bank statement or some sort of proof of funds to validate what they wrote on that piece of paper?
Yeah, we don't want to be too intrusive, because there's borderline, right? But if we have that information, say you give me the financial information sheet and you list on there, I have 100,000 in Bank of America account. When I'm having a conversation with your lender, I know what questions to ask, because, you know, we're assuming that everybody's working in good faith. So if the lender is telling me that, yes, I received an offer, they are offering 50,000 above the list, they agreed to pay 30,000 if the appraisal comes below that, and they're showing on their financial information sheet they have 100,000. When I'm having a conversation with the lender, I'm like, look, hey, I have a financial information sheet here. It says that they have 100,000. They offer this amount way above ask. Do they have it? Have you verified it? If he says yes, I mean, it's like you you give them that grace, right? You have to take their word for it because we extend professional courtesies. So if the lender is telling me that, then I'm taking their word for it. Now, are some of them dishonest? Yeah, but you do the best you can with the information without being too intrusive. So.
Kathleen, you got 3 people with their hands up. Donnell was first, then Aaron, then Anita.
Okay.
Kathleen, I just want to make a point here. Back in the day when Ann Cook and I were selling real estate, that's all we used was the financial information sheet. We did not use a pre-approval letter. So I think they could complement each other in certain situations. But financial information sheets has been used for quite some time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Donnell. And Ann Cook, that's a good name to drop into a conversation. She's one of the real estate commissioners, very, very well regarded, if you all don't know.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Aaron?
Hi, good morning. I guess question, comment about the financial information sheet. I run into it. It seems to be more of a jurisdictional thing, like down in Montgomery County, HCAR area. It seems to be a quote unquote requirement. And I get, I'm reading the comments, and Kenny's made some really good comments. Missy made another one. You talk to the lender, ask, have they verified all the assets and what have you. I'd much rather get that information from a lender than just somebody writing something on a piece of paper. But I guess my, again, question, comment is, can the forms committee do something about this form? Maybe removing it? Like, Kenny made a good point. This form predates the consumer protection laws. So just the very existence of this form puts us as real estate professionals in a precarious situation, probably inadvertently setting ourselves and our clients up for liability. And I'm thinking about this along the lines of the blank addendum. A lot of jurisdictions remove the blank addendum for that very reason, because agents were, quote unquote, illegally practicing law by, making up these, addenda. I think HCAR still has it, and maybe FCAR, but all the other jurisdictions got rid of the blank addendum for that very reason. And I'm wondering if this would, qualify along those same lines.
Hey, Aaron, great question. But just to point out that that's Maryland Realtors, that's not a statewide form.
Okay.
We don't have a financial, so that would be probably.
So it is a HCAR, what have you,
HCAR or
broker.
brokerage. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense then. That's why I see it in Montgomery County a lot. So, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And was there one more question, I think, or one other?
Anita has her hand up.
Yeah, just to speak to what Henry said, and I feel that that's a question you would ask anyways. You always want an updated pre-approval if your offer changes, and if there was something like an appraisal gap and such, I think whether you had a financial sheet to prompt you or not, that's a question you would ask the lender about. Do they have the funds to do this? And that's been verified by the lender, which, as we just said, holds more weight.
I would just say a side note for myself personally, I'm always a little surprised by how much information the buyer's loan officer will disclose to the listing agent. It just is, that's all supposed to be confidential as well. So, and I the industry works how it works, and you know people and you have conversations, but that is always a little bit surprising to me that the buyer's loan officer would tell you, oh yes, he's got 100,000 or whatever it is. That's just, to me, that always just that makes me pause every time I hear about that.
And even if they don't speak to the whole thing, to that, how much funds they have, but
Right.
if they say they
Sufficient.
are able to do this,
Yeah.
then they're able to do that, per them.
Right. Yeah, I think the bottom line, is there another question?
You have Sean and Jean. Sean's first.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is there any recourse when the buyer fills that out? I mean, I can put $1 million there and that looks fantastic, but like you said, the lender doesn't need to answer that question if the $1 million is there. Is there any recourse? Because they don't have to use that $1 million to even buy that house. So, I mean, it looks good, but.
Do you mean if it's a misrepresentation or what?
Correct.
Yeah, that's, a lot of times these things, they're theoretically, there's a remedy or recourse, but in the real world, what's going to happen. Right. I mean, in every contract, there's an implied duty of good faith and fair dealing. So you're, you're not supposed to lie basically or make a misrepresentation on something that's, part of your offer or supporting your offer. It's all supposed to be true. What's, the way the contract is written, if the buyer is acting in bad faith or making a misrepresentation, what's the seller's remedy? For the most part, it would be that the buyer would forfeit their EMD. That's generally going to be it for the seller. If the seller defaults and doesn't, we can just talk about this for a second. If the seller defaults or does something, in bad faith, that the buyer generally has more remedies. The buyer might have the option to file a lawsuit for specific performance, to force the seller to sell that, to specifically perform. You are going to sell your property to me as agreed in the contract. The legal thought there is, basically the buyer's giving the seller money, and money is money. Buyer A is not giving me money. I'll just sell it again to buyer B, and I'll get buyer B's money, and the seller will be made whole. So the seller's remedy is usually money. If the seller breaches and the buyer cannot purchase that specific property, legally that specific property is considered so unique that the buyer can't be made whole if the buyer has to buy another property. So that's why the buyer would generally have the right to sue for specific performance. But in general, it's just going to be, the seller could probably get the EMD. I don't even want to disparage my fellow lawyers, but it's going to cost a certain amount of money if you're going to file a lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, again, I guess, I don't want to throw any agents under the bus, but if the buyer's agent somehow knows that those statements are not accurate, there's potentially, a case could be filed with the Maryland Real Estate Commission or potentially an ethics complaint with the local board. But that would be with respect to the agent, not necessarily to the buyer. So good question, though. Yeah. All right. Who else we got?
Jean.
Morning.
Do this. I'm asking you
So
to.
I guess I have a different take on the financial information sheet, because I would think that's the decision that the buyer makes if they want to supply one. Because again, it could make a difference in their offer being accepted as opposed to a lender letter that isn't really clear on how strong the buyer is. So I don't think it should be eliminated for that reason, that it's a tool that a buyer, if they choose to, can fill out and submit with their offer.
Well, this is a good question. I'm making a note for myself to talk. You guys all know Susan Mitchell at our office. She's our liaison with the Maryland Real Estate Commission. I haven't had there's a lot of points been raised, on both sides, and good points too. Like I said, initially, the one that I can think of off the top of my head, I was really uncomfortable with it because it was asking the buyer's agent to make representations about the buyer's credit, which is, I didn't, how do you know if your client has good credit, bad, excellent credit, fair credit, I didn't like that part of it at all. So that's the first thing that leaps into my mind is I think these financial statements can be overly broad. And then there are potentially some fair housing issues on there as well. It could show marital status, right? Source of income. Again, if someone has some sort of discrimination or bad thoughts about a particular industry, a particular employer, they may reject somebody because of the type of work they do. I mean, potentially a police officer or whatever it might be. School teachers, maybe someone hates school teacher, whatever it might be. That seems a remote possibility, but that is a possibility as well. And again, this is maybe, again, just because I don't sell, to me, I still feel like a lender letter is more solid and more substantial than something that anyone could complete about themselves with no verification at all. That's just my thought.
Well, I guess as marital status, if it's a husband and wife buying a house, I would think that that's pretty evident that it's two people involved. Somehow there's some kind of relationship, whether it's a brother, sister, or something like that. So I know there's two sides to every story, but
yeah,
I just find that it's a tool that if our client chooses to want to fill it out, that we should have something in our toolbox to give it to them.
Right. That's a good point. I will reach out and through Susan, I think, reach out to the Real Estate Commission and see if they have any thoughts or any guidance. Like I said, the only one specific case that I was familiar with, the form was not great. Let's just leave it.
That is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the form that I'm using, which is through Prince George's, doesn't have anything about credit. I mean, it's not supposed to. How is an agent going to know if the
right, exactly,
credit or the people themselves? But you're right. It's really the way the form is formatted that will make a difference whether it's a violation or not.
Right. And I think, again, of course, obviously this topic is timely because of this market. multiple offers. How do I separate, these 17 offers? How do I even begin to prioritize or figure out which one is acceptable? So I can see why it's happening now. I'll reach out to Susan and see if we could maybe, contact the Real Estate Commission, see if they have any guidance on it. It's not illegal. I think, again, I would just say be cautious. Take a look at it, see if there's something that crosses a line. And again, if your buyer doesn't want to provide that information, if they say, I have a pre-approval from a lender, I don't want to submit that, then, you're going to submit the offer anyway. Again, remember, the listing agent, if they receive an offer, they're obligated to present it.
Yeah. You have another question by Miss Patricia Davis.
Miss Patricia Davis.
You're muted, Patricia. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
can hear you now, Pat.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Most recently, I received 17 offers, of which 5 of them were cash buyers. And what my concern was that the cash buyers were showing me proof of funds, but the proof of funds did not have a date on it. So I don't know if that's the money they had last week or the year before or whatever. And so that would be one of the things I would be cautious about, in knowing that if you're dealing with cash offers, that at least the credibility of the proof of funds.
That's a good point, Pat. I remember that we worked together at that point. There was some, there's scams all over the place. There was some Bank of Canada that had fraudulent people. There was a little scam going around several years ago where it was some bank statements that were all fraudulent. I think the bank didn't exist, or the bank existed, but they had changed something, but basically the supposedly official bank statements were all frauds and were not worth the paper they were printed on. So that is a good point, Pat, too. Just you have to scrutinize everything that you receive, regardless of who's filling it out or what they're showing you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So good point. Thank you.
All right. Are there any more closing questions? These were great discussions.
You know what? We didn't even get into advertising.
I can't believe it.
Do you want to talk for a couple minutes about advertising?
Yes, I think you should. Absolutely.
All right.
Time.
Okay. We can go through that relatively quickly. Advertising, again, you guys know, well, you may know or have some concerns. It seems that some people follow the advertising laws and some people maybe did not. And it seemed like the people who did not, that they seemed to get away with it without any consequence, right? And I wanted to just bring to your attention a couple cases with the Real Estate Commission has disciplined some people recently with respect to advertising. And just to give you a heads up that the Real Estate Commission is looking at advertising more carefully now. And I have seen some disciplinary actions recently where agents were disciplined for advertising violations, and the brokers, listen up, y'all, and the brokers were disciplined. There were 2 cases fairly recently with the Real Estate Commission. Under the Brokers Act, right, there's certain requirements. We have to include the licensee's name has to be included in the advertisement, right? In one of the cases, the licensee, there was no licensee name in the ad. So the Real Estate Commission disciplined the licensee. There was a fine, $2,500. And the broker was also fined. The broker was fined for failing to reasonably and adequately supervise that agent because they didn't review the ad. And that's a first. Well, as far as I know anyway, I'd never heard of that happening before with the Real Estate Commission. So $2,500 for the agent, $3,500 for the broker. And remember, the agent violation was, an advertising violation. The broker's violation was not reasonably and adequately supervising that agent. So a broker supervision issue. So there was the one case, I believe it was just the licensee's name. There was no licensee name on the ad. The other case was a little bit different, slightly different facts. I think there was no company name, no company phone number on the advertisement. Again, that's required as well, you all know. And in that case, again, as well, the licensee was fined $2,500, and the broker in that case, different company, that broker was also fined $3,500. So I'll say again, that's a heads up for you guys. And if you don't have anything planned for your next sales meeting, you might want to talk about advertising. But one thing I will say as a practical matter, we get calls and questions, and the same thing happened when I worked at the brokerage. You get asked like, hey, I'm compliant with the laws. I went out and paid and got new signs, and I'm doing everything properly. And I go past this guy's signs every day and they're not compliant. And how come he gets away with it and nothing happens to him? If someone calls Maryland Realtors legal hotline, honestly, we're a member organization. We talk to members all day, every day. I'm not trying to get members in trouble. Our first response is generally, hey, if you're an agent and you see somebody else's whose signs are not compliant, I'd suggest you go speak with your broker and have your broker call that other agent's broker, have a broker to broker conversation, and hopefully the broker can make that person change their signs. I would just say, if you are ever in a situation to make those calls, you got a little more leverage now. If that broker doesn't have the agent fix the sign, they could be subject to a $3,500 fine. So that's maybe the upside of it. It gives you a little more leverage. If you're going to have a conversation with somebody that, from another company, your signs are not compliant, or this agent's signs are not compliant, maybe that $2,500, $3,500, that might get their attention in a way that maybe they weren't paying attention previously, to be honest. But the bottom line, of course, is you should be reading your people's ads before they are placed. And if you're not, potentially, there could be a fine imposed, $2,500 for the agent, $3,500 for the broker. That's what the fine that was imposed was. So the other thing, that's number one. I would say the Real Estate Commission is focusing on advertising in a way they haven't before, and focusing on the broker too, to be honest. I haven't seen that before. So that's a sort of an update in general, to focus on the advertising piece that the Real Estate Commission is looking at. The other thing I did want to talk about, there are some recent changes that the Real Estate Commission has enacted. These were effective March 7th of this year. And the one, probably the easier one to talk about, it was a change with respect to team advertising. Remember the way the Brokers Act was written, I believe team advertising, the name of the team, the phrase that was used is directly connected. The name of the team was supposed to be directly connected to the name of the brokerage in team advertising. And again, that's a nice lawyerly phrase. What does directly connected mean? I think it might have been, no, wasn't Ann Cook. I was gonna say, one of the Real Estate Commissioners sort of made a joke like directly connected. Can I take a pen and draw a line from my team name at the top of the page down to the name of the brokerage at the bottom of the page? Does that mean it's directly connected? It does not. I should stop. Don't anybody think that. It clearly does not. But anyway, so the Real Estate Commission now updated the regulations, and they have given guidance on what directly connected means. And this, you guys, there's magic words now, right? There are 4 magic words: of, from, with, or at. Dartez team, of ABC Realty, with, of, from, with, or at, period. Those are the 4 magic words. Those are the words that are supposed to be used, right? So that's what directly connected means. It means you use those words. And let me read the exact, they kind of even tighten it up a little bit. What does it say? Those words, of, from, with, or at, no other word, symbol, or image is between the team name and the brokerage name. So that's it. Those 4 magic words, period, nothing else. Let me just ask again, practical question. This came up in class, I think 2 days ago. Yard sign, right? Yard sign, the large part of the sign has the name of the brokerage, the broker's, the office phone number on there. And then what do they call the bottom part? The hanger, though I don't know what they call it. The little part that hangs on the bottom, that has the name of the team, or the name of the team, the name of the licensee, and the phone number. What do we think about that? Is that compliant? Does it say of, from, with, or at, the team name and the brokerage name? There's a phone number in between, and it's on a different, I'm not so sure that's compliant. I think that might be that they might have to change those and put the of, or from, with, or at up on the top with the name of the company, because they're not directly connected. There's a couple lines in between them now. So that's a little bit, you probably have to look at some yard signs too.
I've seen a lot of that, Kathleen.
I know. And in the past, I would have recommended that. That seems to be a great way to do it. If I'm the broker, I would love to have nice signs for my brokerage, and then just let them do that individually at the bottom. Everybody, I don't know if you know, we have a webinar tomorrow morning at 10 on advertising. I'm going to be doing it, Drew Kelly and Michael Kasnick from the Real Estate Commission. So I'm going to I'm going to use that exact example because you're right, Jessica. I see that all the time as well. So I'm going to ask. And if you have any other examples, you want to shoot me an email or something with some samples this afternoon, do it. I'll get Michael Kasnick to give some guidance tomorrow. We're going to go through it, and I would like to have some specific examples so we can get some clarity on that. But anyway, that's what it is: directly connected of, from, with, or at, with the team name and the company name. And then the other thing, the other guidance that was issued is the one-click rule. I know we've been talking about the one-click rule in the ethics classes for a couple years, and NAR approved the one-click rule under its code of ethics several years ago, I think back in 2016. But what the one-click rule is, essentially what we just were going through, all of the advertising requirements, right? You have to have a licensee name. If you're part of a team, you have to have a team name, the broker, of, from, with, or at, your brokerage name, if you're your phone number, your company phone number, all of that. And then you probably want to talk about the property too, right? So there's a lot of information that has to go on an ad. And now with people using different platforms and apps and more electronic or digital advertising, some of those platforms and apps don't have a lot of space, right? There's maybe not enough characters for all of that information to fit on the, the device or the platform or whatever it is. So the Real Estate Commission, this is something they had started working on, and then COVID and, a couple different things came up, but they finally did release this new regulation. It is a regulation effective March 7th of this year again as well. And this guidance it's the one-click rule. The one-click rule has been adopted here in Maryland. And let me read it out. I'm going to read it exactly. For any electronic media advertisement, it shall contain the applicable disclosures. That's all the required information we just went through. It has to be included on the first 25% of the main page of the electronic media advertisement, right? So let's just pause there before I read the rest of it. That would be like if you have a website, something like that, all of the required information has to be on the first 25% of the page. And I happen to be at the Real Estate Commission when they discuss that. They don't want the consumer to have to scroll down. You can't have your beautiful smiling happy face at the top with your beautiful happy name, your beautiful happy phone number, and then your broker phone number, your company logo, and all that at the bottom. They want everything to be together, the top 25% of whatever the page the person lands on, whatever comes up on the screen. They want all that information in the top 25%. And then the only other thing with the one-click rule is basically, it's really, Twitter is probably the easiest way to think about it. If you're using an app or a platform that has a character limitation of 280 words or less, which I think for the most part is Twitter, in that you can put, your advertisement would include whatever information you can fit. It could just be, your name, your phone number, whatever. That will be acceptable if you include a hyperlink. And if the user can click on that hyperlink, and with one click, they get to a page with all of the required information on the top 25% of the page. So that's the way that's written now. That's like digital or electronic advertising, the one-click rule, and all of the required information is supposed to be on the top 25% of the page. And I already know, you already know, that's causing some problems for some people. A lot of companies have templates. This is the brokerage website looks like this. Each of our agents gets their own website. A lot of them have the agent information on the top and the company phone numbers at the bottom. That's not compliant with this new statute, the new regulation. The new regulation would say that both phone numbers should be at the top 25% of the page, the landing page. So I don't know, again, I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, I guess the tech folks, the IT people will have to modify your company template to make it compliant with Maryland law. That's, I know, we all know how that works. IT people, they work, sometimes they're fantastic and sometimes they work at their own pace, but really it would be a priority. It should be a priority for them because that's a state. The Maryland Real Estate Commission implemented that. That's just not like your broker wants to change something and wants things to look different. This is law. This is the code of ethics. Your license requires that you comply with this. So it is a big deal. As a practical matter, again, for you all as brokers and office managers, I don't know what the solution is other than trying to get your IT people on it quickly. I don't know if you can set up a temporary page, maybe a temporary landing page that would be compliant. Maybe it's not as beautiful as your company page, but maybe you could set up a temporary page with all the information at the top. That might be a workaround, short-term workaround. But anyway, I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of that. Again, like I said, we'll have a webinar with Michael Kasnick tomorrow. We could y'all can, if you haven't registered, register for that. You can ask questions. If you're not going to be able to make it, shoot me an email if you want to give me a sample. I mean, I'm not going to flash anybody's name or brokerage name on the webinar or something. I'll switch it up a little bit, but we could explain like, okay, what if it looks like this? And ask Michael Kasnick to give guidance on whether that's acceptable or what would need to change to make it acceptable. So those are the latest changes from the Real Estate Commission. And I fully recognize that that is going to affect many of you, and your agents as well.
Thank you, Kathleen. On that, we have 3 more minutes. Anyone
Okay.
have one last question? And I want Kathleen to please see the response from, I think, the discussion about the financial form. Mr. Kenny Smallwood made a good comment. I just wanted you to be aware of that. He shared some information. Any last questions?
I do.
Sean, okay.
So I live in Baltimore City, and I saw a sign, what I'm guessing is a real estate agent that lived there, and looked exactly like a for sale sign, but it was basically advertising that he is a real estate agent. He would be happy to help anybody or anything like that. And as like a door hanger, or, a city sign coming off the window, but it was not a for sale house. Is that legal?
That's a good question. I might have to do a little bit of research on that one, but my first one, I don't like that one. No, to me, that's deceptive. I'm not even sure. That's commercial advertising for his company, for his business. Is he able to do that in a residential area? I'm maybe
It's
not.
Baltimore City, you do what you want.
So I don't know. You're not supposed to do door hangers in Baltimore City.
Well, they do it anyway.
I know. I live in Baltimore City. I know, but that's illegal. I mean, you're not supposed to. That's prohibited. Yeah, I would. My suspicion would be that that's not permissible. But
Okay.
What the reality is in Baltimore City, who's going to enforce it?
Right.
We have a lot of other things to take care of in Baltimore City. Somebody
bit.
coming and disciplining somebody for a sign in their front yard is probably slim to none. But I'm not sure that would be permissible.
Sounds good.
All right. Anything else? What do we have? A minute?
That is it. This was wonderful, guys. Thank you for sticking in with us. And Kathleen, thank you again for your time, your service, and all that you do for Maryland Realtors. You are definitely an asset to our region and our state. Any closing words? Let me see. I have a lot of my leaders on here. Please remember to plug the Fair Haven Challenge with your office. Guys, there's a competition going. Go to the website, hcar.org. You will actually see how many people in each office have finished the Fair Haven Challenge. It's very competitive. And the office that wins gets a full month of free advertisement on the website, guys. Thank you, guys. I hope you have a wonderful remainder of the week. And Kathleen, anything else you want to close on? We're on time.
We're on time. I want to thank you, Jessica, for all that you do for your local, for the state, the region, and the nation. She's on so many committees. She's really amazing. And I thank everybody for joining too. It's great seeing some of y'all. I haven't seen you guys in a long time. Miss Pat Davis, especially. Miss you, Pat. Good seeing you. You know what? I'm just thinking though, we do have something talking about Fairhaven. This is still in the planning stages, so this is just a heads up. It's not definite yet. Colette Massengale and I are working on something. We're going to do hopefully a one-day event in June. That's Pride Month, and we had just gotten a class approved, implicit bias, overriding the bias, and it was just approved for CE credit by the Maryland Real Estate Commission, a 3-hour class. So we're hoping to put that together, offer that in June. That's a good class. That's part of I think the NAR challenge is to do Fairhaven, the implicit bias, and the other one I just blanked on.
At Home with Diversity?
Oh, At Home with Diversity. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We did that too. So that's really the NAR challenge. They're asking a lot of their officers to do all 3. So Jessica's challenging you all to do Fairhaven. I'm just giving you a heads up that we are hopefully going to be offering the implicit bias training here in Maryland in June. And At Home with Diversity, hopefully y'all have that. I think you offered that once, didn't you, Jessica?
Yeah, we had At Home with Diversity last week, I want to say.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But guys, this type of initiative starts at the top, and all of you all are leaders, and we should be leading by example. So please I'm challenging you, but challenge your peers, challenge your office and your agents. We are forever students. We all need to be on top of some of these implicit biases and situations that we've been conditioned to keep doing. So
Right.
guys, thank you. And I hope to see you all soon.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks,
Okay,
Kathleen.
bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Shirley.